Tec Sounds presents EduTrends.
Welcome to EduTrends podcast and webcast. I'm your host, José Pepe Escamilla, Associate Director of the Institute for the Future of Education. And today's guest is Dr. Uohna Thiessen, Senior Data Science Consultant at Meta and Adjoint Professor at CalTech. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Great. And then also your field is machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Exactly.
So I would like to start asking you what is machine learning important for student achievement and education?
Yes. So machine learning is the idea of collecting data and then using that, training machines, the computer, to get the information, the insight out of that data, so that we can make different decisions, data-driven, data-guided decisions for our enterprise. And especially in the area of education, we can get so much information from our students, whether it's offline or online, about the learning process, about the activities and the assessments, and then use that to enhance and improve the learning such that we get better performance ultimately from the students, from our teachers, the administrators. Everyone can benefit from machine learning information.
Thanks for your answer. So on the recent weeks, there has been a lot of noise about generative intelligence and a tool like GPT chat or chat GPT. And I have seen some positions like inhibiting the access to chat GPT in New York.
Yes, that's right.
I think also in Australia, they coming back to face-to-face exams, and essays. And on the other side, people like me that see that I'm enough old to remember when calculators were not that common, no? So I remember that they were prohibited. We couldn't use calculators, and now they are part of the process of educational process. So I was wondering, what's your view on the potential of these tools, and what are the benefits and the drawbacks of these kind of tools?
Well, just like you said, the chat GPT is a new technology. And just like every time new technology comes on board, there are always skeptics. There are people who are afraid. And usually those are the ones who did not prepare. They have not made the realization that the society is changing and education has to change. And so chat GPT, I personally think it's a great tool that can allow for personalization of education, right? Because the old system of education where one size fits all is no longer going to be sustainable. Students now have many options, many choices by which they can gain education. And so just like the calculator you said, was a tool, the ChatGPT is a tool. And so education has to make that shift and see it as a tool and start focusing more on the principles and the concepts and away from the regurgitation of ideas, which if you do regurgitation alone assessment, then ChatGPT will destroy education. But if you focus on critical thinking and how you can be creative and how you can use the tool to enhance whatever it is that you're doing, then ChatGPT is an excellent tool. I'll give you an example. This one gentleman talked about how he used ChatGPT to develop a writing curriculum for his students, where the ChatGPT would actually take the students' writing, assess it, give feedback on all the areas where they have shown some weakness in their writing, and suggestions of how they can improve their writing and get immediate real-time feedback. So it's an amazing tool.
The feedback was given by ChatGPT?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
right.
But each student got a different feedback. So it was specific to the student's writing, not what the teacher is following some, list of line of things. So yeah, very personalized education.
Very personalized. I want to go further into personalization because I believe that one of the possibilities of artificial intelligence in the future is to make true the dream of personalized education, because right now thinking that we can have a professor dedicated to a student is impossible financially. But with the help of artificial intelligence, the professor can be more focused on giving quality time.
Yes.
So how do you think that artificial intelligence can help into personalization?
Oh, I think it's a perfect tool, because artificial intelligence and machine learning in general will collect data from each student. And so there's a number of features that can be collected. So they can collect information about the learning struggles that students face individually. So each student has different learning styles. And so one way might work for one student, but another way struggle. And so you can collect that kind of information from each student. Then you can understand what are some of the blockers that each student is having, whether it is the math strategy that is being challenging for them, or the critical thinking, or maybe it's the science, whatever the area that they have a weakness in. AI in general can identify those areas. And then once those areas are identified, then we can develop strategies that are geared specifically to the areas that these students are struggling with, and then meet them where they are. So we can use machine learning to identify the areas. We can use machine learning to develop strategies that can help. We can use machine learning to find out what are some of the things that are causing students to drop out, and try to prevent that before it happens. We can use machine learning to find out where along the process of, say, just applying for a school, or how they take one course to a next. All of that we can streamline using machine learning, and it can help the teachers to know how they can help the students individually. But one of the most critical ways that machine learning can help is by developing these personalized feedback to the students. So the teacher will have a general feedback for the whole class, and maybe even individual, but each student can now look at their profile and see where they have done well, where they're struggling, where they need to do more work, where they need some more practice, where they need to spend some more time. And then as soon as they're doing that, they can see the changes in their performance. So it's like an immediate feedback. And that then makes them feel more in control of their education. And then they're therefore more motivated to, continue in the progress. So it's a wonderful opportunity.
Yes, it's I myself, I did my PhD in artificial intelligence. So I believe that artificial intelligence hasn't delivered for years, since the 60s. And this is going to be the year of the decade of artificial intelligence.
Yes.
But now I believe this is. This is because we have the computing power and we have the data.
Yes.
And so I believe that will happen. But my next question for you will be, what are the limitations of these kinds of technology? Because many people think they're magical, and they can do everything, and you can follow them blindly. What are the limitations of those technologies?
I think the major concern is about the bias, or, in terms of only a certain group of people have access, or the data is coming only from a certain group, and we're then using that for the entire population. That is not going to be the way, because we're still going to leave out a large segment of the population. So bias is one issue. Privacy is another, right? Because that's a big problem in all of the, the big tech companies now, because the government is coming down on them as far as privacy of the people's data. And so even with the students, it's going to be even more tight, because they're younger, they're not adults. They can't make a decision, to some extent about who has access to their data and what will be done with their data. So that's going to require a lot of policy and oversight to make sure that the privacy laws are not being violated. And I think some of the other pitfalls again comes back to fairness and access. Who has access to these tools and who's benefiting from them? Because far too long, like you said, we've had AI and it's been in the hands of a select few, right? And they've guided, they've the ones that driven all the innovation. It's been in one direction or just a few, finance and business and marketing. Education is far behind in terms of that. And so if we are going to do it in education, we have to make sure that we are including everyone, all of the stakeholders, the educators, the students, even the underprivileged students who may not have access to the tools right now, but everyone should have a voice in what happens going forward.
Yeah. So in fact, what you're saying is that most of the time what we see here in the Global South is that those data sets that are used to train those artificial intelligence algorithms come from I would say white male English.
Yes, right. And
we
we encountered many problems with that because there were the issue of in England they had a face recognition model that they developed, and we implemented it in the police department in London, and it was an epic failure because it could not distinguish black faces, right?
Wow.
So if there was a black person that they were supposed to be looking for, they would the AI would pick the first black person that was shown to them, whether innocent or not. And so it became a huge problem. They had to dismantle it. So we have to make sure that the data that is being used to train these models, that data is truly representative of the entire population as much as possible. So.
And there's also the bias in the data use in terms of, for instance, racism or the kind of. I remember this AI chat of Microsoft. I think that was trained.
Yes, that was a problem. Although I think that some of the developers probably played a trick on somebody because the AI started saying very racist thing and they had to quickly shut it down. But so that's why you have to be very careful. And so even in the education, right, we have to make sure that we are, we have a strategy in place where we are looking at it from a small sector first, and we implement it in a small sector. We see how it works. Then we increase a little bit, monitor it, see how it works, and don't try to go from nothing to everybody in one step, right? Otherwise, you're going to have these massive problems. And then once that happens, it kind of sets everything back several years because now everybody has a bad opinion on the technology, so right. We have to be careful about that.
And you were talking about privacy. I was invited by a UK group as an international advisor for a sort of manifesto of ethic use of AI in education. And one of the things that was on that manifest that I like a lot is that you own your data. So, for instance, I have a math tutor or a system that is giving me feedback, etc. And now I change from one system to another, but I cannot take my data. I have to, let's say, retrain whatever new system that I'm using.
Right.
So one of the things there is you can carry your data to other places and take it. Mm-hmm. How realistic is this situation, and do you think it's possible to do that, and on what conditions?
Yeah, so yes, I think it's possible. There is a new area that Professor Amlan was talking about, where they're talking about data. I forgot the term, immigration, almost like have the data having a visa. So you know when it's going in and when it's coming out. So you are monitoring the movement of your data, and so that's important. And I think we need to give people control of their data. I think that's important. But at the same time, we don't want to keep the data, right? If we train a model on that data, it's suitable for that time, that situation. We're going to have to retrain the model on new data. That's a problem. People try to use old models on new situations or different situations. You need to retrain. It has a constant optimization, iteration process of these models. And that's the challenge, right? Because a lot of times they have not built into the strategy that optimization and that retraining that is absolutely necessary if we're going to continue using these models. So, but again, also as far as the data is concerned, we don't need to keep the data. We need new data. But if we do give people ownership of their data, when I mean students, right? They own the data. If they are the ones developing the model, we don't have to worry about that. All right? It's their data. They own the model. So that issue of ownership and privacy, we sidestep. But right now, the way it's built is we're taking someone's data and they're not stakeholders in the model algorithm development.
Okay.
And that's a problem.
So it's still far away.
Well, I think education is where we can make a difference, right? Because part of using machine learning in education is training the students to be the machine learning engineers, right? So that we don't just keep the technology in a small group. I think everyone should learn machine learning. I was listening to Andrew Ng. He's a premier expert on this topic in the US. And he was making the reference about machine learning is now what reading and writing was 100 years ago. It was in the hands of the priests and those sacred leaders, right? And they're the ones who made all the decisions about how everyone lives. And we did not benefit from the reading and writing. But once we made reading and writing accessible to the masses, then everyone can use it. And we need to do the same with machine learning. So machine learning should not just be in the university, a special course or major. I think everyone in elementary school level should be learning machine learning, right? Because now we can learn machine learning without the programming, right? We have a user interface. We have all kinds of tools. We have games that teach machine learning. So I think that everyone should be involved. And that way they develop the models and then they own, the rights or whatever it's being used. So
great. I have to link. I want to link the last two questions. These ones with your answer with machine learning, and the other one about one of the obstacles, and one of them is bias. No, so there are several types of bias. One of them is how you train data and etc. But you can put more data there. But also there's data that could be influenced by the kind of people that produce that data. No? So I remember also I think it was in the US that judges were using a program based on machine learning to decide if someone can follow the process in jail or at home. Mm-hmm. And it was biased by postal code, color, ethnics, or whatever.
Yes.
So it's and my question linking the two of them is it possible to how can I say clean that data so that it's perfect from everything? Or it is not possible, and you can clean some part of it, and you have to live with those imperfections. And then the rest is education, and you have to train people to decide upon the proposal of the machine or the algorithm based on the knowledge that they have on how it works and the data set it was trained with. So what's the solution there?
So right now, when it comes to machine learning, AI, even deep learning and all of that, we have methods that we can use to reduce bias, right? Because that's a big issue. That's a whole area of machine learning, minimizing bias, because we realize that that's a problem. So we can do a number of things, including randomization of data. Sometimes we can do some addition of variability in the data. We can do a number of things to reduce the bias so that when we develop the model, it is more generalizable. That's the area that I very strongly focused on. Yes, making the models generalizable, meaning works well on your data, but how well does it work on a data set it has never seen before? And that is important. So that's a whole area of study. So we can use those to minimize the bias to some extent. Then as far as the teaching, the interpretation of the data, the machine learning output, is that what you're referring to? Helping them to understand?
Yes, it's like you understand that the advice that you're receiving from the algorithm or the answer you're receiving, you have to use your you cannot follow that blindly. You have to use
yes,
critical
right.
thinking, but understanding on how those algorithms work and what data they were trained with, no?
Right, that's very important, yes, because there are limitations in terms of how it is applied, right? So you have to consider where the data is coming from, and so how, where and when it can be applied, what features were included. And that is the problem that we are still encountering with AI, especially in the industry, right? Because we develop the models in paper, but when we put it in production, something goes wrong, because in the paper, it's almost in a perfect setting. But you have to implement those models in machines or in the factory or under certain circumstances. And there are all these variabilities that we can't factor in, like the weather or the power source or I don't know, the noise. I mean, there's just so many things that can go around with the infrastructure that is that's part of the machine learning models, right? Because it's a whole process. The machine learning models are part of that process. And so we can work on this and innovate and develop that, but we still need the other parts, right? So that's where, when it comes to the business process, we need all the stakeholders, the marketing people, the business management, we need sociologists, we need economists, and all of these to be part of that, because those have a very, they can have a major effect on the final outcome, but also on the interpretation. So that's why in the area of machine learning, they stress the emphasis of having the hard skills like coding and programming and statistics. But then there are some other skills, such as expertise in that area, some expertise in so if you're working on financial models, then we don't just need machine learning engineers, we need the economists as well, who are going to consider all the factors, as well as consider the interpretation of the model and to how well it can be implemented and what are some of the limitations of that. But to go back to your question of teaching, I think that if we are teaching students, everyone, to build the machine learning models, we start with simple models, of course, and we use very basic tools and techniques to help them. And I think that the students themselves would be, we need to incorporate that in the learning, would gain an appreciation of, because when they build their models, their rudimentary models, and then they apply it and they say, oh, wow, okay, we didn't think about this and we didn't think about that. They begin to understand that there are limitations and there are other considerations that we need to take into consideration when we try to implement these models.
The other day I was with a colleague that is dedicated to writing, for media, etc., articles, and I demonstrated ChatGPT to her.
Yes, yeah.
And she said, I will mark in my calendar this day, and I don't think I will have a job in the future. I'm afraid, no?
Yeah.
So it also reminds me the fear that some professors have, that they will lose their job because AI will take over.
Yeah.
So what can you say to them? Can you reassure them, or you will ask them to start thinking on something else?
I can reassure them, because as grand and wonderful as the ChatGPT is, it cannot be creative. It's based on past data, and it only can do what you ask of it, and it is limited in what it's able to do, right? It cannot have the emotional aspect and that personalization. So I would advise those who are doing that kind of creative work, use ChatGPT as a tool, and then allow it to make you more efficient and generate more work and put your own personal touch to it. I write. I've been writing, and now I've used ChatGPT. But when I generate something from ChatGPT, I have to go back and edit and make sure that it is my style of writing, it's my voice, that I put my personal touch. Because, the way ChatGPT writes, you can tell that it's ChatGPT, right? Because it follows the perfect grammar. It's very methodical. Everything is lined up, and that's normally not how we communicate on a daily basis, So it's a great tool for helping, but it should be the start of where you are. So the professors of editors, they shouldn't be worried. I think it should be a celebration because it allows them to not be so bogged down with the grunt work. Now they can be more creative and generate more articles in this less time. So that's how I see it. Yeah.
Thanks for your answer. One last question. We have talked here about learning more about machine learning. You say that is someone said Andrew Yang said it was like reading and writing basic skills, and I also think that is, and you agree with me, that it's important to understand those algorithms to do a better use, a more ethical use of the results of them. Mm-hmm. So have you some recommendations for our listeners about where to start learning about this and how to grow their knowledge about machine learning?
Yes. Well, we have so many resources now. I think that, I wish I could go back the time and have all the resources. So, of course, Coursera, Andrew Yang himself, he's the one developed Coursera. There's all kinds of opportunities there. But those are now cost. But there are just the number of free sites, the Data Camp, Udemy, YouTube is got hundreds, if not thousands, of videos learning, machine learning from the basics. And then, my husband, Microsoft and NASA have partnered to join in using NASA data to teach. So they have this program that they are implementing in the schools across America. And I'm speaking elementary level school, right? And they have all these basic courses through Microsoft using NASA data to teach machine learning to the young students. So anyone can access that.
Thank you for your answers. I also remember that there's a basic artificial intelligence course developed by Finland. That they have the objective that every person in Finland should learn about artificial intelligence.
I saw that, and it's a really fun course. I did play around with it a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, dear Dr. Uohna Thiessen, I am very happy to have you here. I have enjoyed a lot of our conversation.
A pleasure, Pepe.
And I hope that the audience of the Institute for the Future of Education, Dr. Pepe, yes, that the audience of the EduTrends podcast of the Institute for the Future of Education will enjoy it too.
Yes, absolutely. It was my pleasure. And I look forward maybe to coming back and chatting again once you are now teaching everyone in Mexico machine learning.
It will be great to see you soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. For more information, visit observatory.tech.mx/EduTrends podcast and ife.tech.mx. A special thanks to Tecnológico de Monterrey, the Institute for the Future of Education, and the Tec Sounds team. Tec Sounds producer Miguel Mejia. EduTrends producers Esteban Venegas and Cristian Igosa. Stay tuned and play Tec Sounds in your favorite podcast app for other great shows and content.